First things first, you've gotten asked it a million times, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You know, you ran for president, you were doing your job with CNN, you had everything going, and then you decided to run for mayor here in New York City. Why make the decision to get into this race and run for mayor of New York City?
Oh, Kurt, our city is hurting. Our city is in deep pain. We've lost 27,000 lives, 700,000 jobs, over 60 million tourists who supported 300,000 jobs aren't here. It's my city. I'm a public school parent. I want to help our city recover as quickly as possible. That's why I'm running for mayor. I believe I can help. I believe I can get us back on our feet faster.
Andrew, when you announced you were running, almost immediately you took a lot of criticism, a lot of critique came at your way on social media for a lot of different reasons, not just from the candidates you're running against, but from a lot of elected officials, you know, here in New York. Were you surprised at just the level at which you got that kind of criticism and critique from people, and how do you respond to some of the things that you had to deal with?
Well, Kurt, I think it's part and parcel of running for office in New York City. And it's part and parcel of being, frankly, one of the contenders. When I did run for president, there wasn't much political interest in attacking Andrew Yang because, you know, I was always the scrappy underdog. But it's a different environment this time, and I welcome it. The fact is, New Yorkers want to know that their next mayor can take a punch or two and also has a sense of humor about himself or herself. So I welcome it, truly.
But does it bother you, the claims that you were getting from people talking about how you know, either not from here or don't represent the people here? Do those claims bother you?
You know, I think New Yorkers can see right through that stuff. I mean, I've lived here for 25 years. I'm a public school parent. You know, I don't know at what point, like past 25 years, someone becomes a New Yorker. But I think New Yorkers that I meet on the street, when I'm actually able to go outside, which obviously is not right now, are really excited to see me. You know, so I don't get any of that in real life. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. Andrew, you founded nonprofit organizations prior to your political career here. Your previous experience, how do you feel that qualifies you to run New York City as its mayor?
Well, Kurt, I came up running a small business here in New York City. And I think that experience is actually really instrumental in helping us reopen the over 10,000 small businesses that have closed. But also, your customers don't care about anything but that they're getting a good value, that they're getting services delivered on time. And that's what New Yorkers expect from their government. And I did also run a number of nonprofit organizations. And my presidential campaign ended up igniting a movement that inspired millions of Americans, helped win the Senate, and elevate Chuck Schumer to become Senate Majority Leader, which is going to have huge benefits for the people of New York. So I'm a small business owner and operator who's gotten things done, and I think a lot of New Yorkers crave that in City Hall right now.
Andrew, let's get down to a couple of the issues right now, and obviously you can't start any discussion without talking about the pandemic and how that has affected people here in New York City. Right now we're dealing with the vaccine rollout and trying to get as many people vaccinated as possible. What would be your plan to keep the vaccine rollout going and to improve upon the current situation?
I think we've been frustrated by the vaccine rollout, Kurt. There were early reports about how there were doses going unused because people weren't allowed to schedule appointments. There were canceled appointments. So we need to restore confidence that we're vaccinating people as quickly and equitably and effectively as possible. We all know that communities of color have been hit harder by this pandemic, and the early numbers have indicated that people of color have not been getting vaccinated at the same levels. Part of that is trust, but part of that is that we're not bringing the vaccine to people's neighborhoods where they live at a high enough level in certain communities. So we need to get the vaccine out quickly and broadly, and then we need to give people the ability to confirm that they've been vaccinated easily on their smartphone so that people will have confidence to go to theater or office building or school or eventually a restaurant or bar or stadium again.
The other part of that, obviously, small businesses and restaurants in particular have just really had a tough time with everything here in New York City with the pandemic and trying to keep them open and making sure they can reopen some point down the road. What would you do to help them out to make sure that the small businesses are around in the communities right here when we get back?
I'm really passionate about this as someone who's run a small business, Kurt. And when I talk to small business owners, they tell me that they hear from the city about one thing, which is complying with regulations. We need to also be lending a hand. We need to let people know what resources are available to them. We need to give more businesses and restaurants a fighting chance to stay open. I'm thrilled that there'll be at least some modest indoor dining allowed as of this weekend. And when I was in the Bronx, the reality is that outdoor dining is not feasible in a lot of these environments. So we should be trying to lend businesses a hand. I'm going to be prioritizing helping small businesses reopen as mayor. I've already committed to a czar who's going to run a program to help 15,000 businesses reopen, including a People's Bank, so that we actually have some money to put to work to help businesses reopen their doors. Because I've run one of these businesses, and the fact is you will not reopen unless you feel like you're going to make money.
Andrew, people who have possibly never even heard of you know about universal basic income from you. They know about your plan. And now the question is, in New York City, how would you implement that? And how would we pay for that if you wanted to implement it?
Well, in New York City, we spend a lot of money on folks when they hit really difficult circumstances, Kurt. And so by investing a fraction of those resources in keeping people in more stable situations, we actually can save money on the back end. I believe alleviating extreme poverty in New York City is going to be enormously powerful and save us tens of thousands of dollars per person on various services and shelters and other things that are really expensive right now that we all know can be improved on. That there are a lot of inefficiencies to the way we're solving people's problems. When they get worse, we have to keep the problems from getting to that point for hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers.
To be clear, do you have a number figure that you're targeting, or do you have in mind regarding what you would want to bring to New York City as far as the universal basic income is concerned?
Yes, our plan has committed $1 billion a year to alleviate extreme poverty for approximately 500,000 of the poorest New Yorkers. And I believe that we would get a lot of that money back. And there may be ways that we can see that this money ends up flowing directly to locally owned small businesses in the Bronx and other communities. If New York City were a country, we'd be the 11th biggest economy in the world. There are ways that we can take advantage of our diversity and scale to keep more money flowing through the hands of the small business owners that need it to stay open right now.
Andrew, how do we better invest in the city's education system and make sure that people, no matter where you live in New York City, no matter which borough you're in, are getting the best possible education?
Well, again, I'm a public school parent, Kurt, and I think we need to trust our teachers more. Our teachers know our kids best. I think right now we're outsourcing a lot of judgment to these high stakes tests. And I think our teachers are better situated to know what our kids need than a test that gets administered once and then you're supposed to make enormous determinations based on that. So to me, it's about empowering teachers and school administrators and enabling them to invest in resources for special needs kids like one of my sons who's on the autism spectrum and requires more dedicated resources to kids who need enrichment. I think that's what parents want for their children. I mean, that's what I want for my children. And there's no reason why we can't make that happen in more schools throughout New York City and not hold ourselves captive to these tests that, that they may be useful, but they shouldn't be replacing our judgment.
Another major issue, obviously, is affordable housing. We've been talking about NYCHA complexes and what public housing here in New York City is. You've come out and talked about green improvements and bringing NYCHA up to date. Talk a little bit about your plan there as far as improving NYCHA and making sure that people have somewhere affordable and truly affordable to live.
I visited several NYCHA facilities, including in the Bronx, and New York City has not been the landlord that it should be for the hundreds of thousands of NYCHA residents. We are going to go to the feds and say, look, we deserve $48 billion to help rebuild these NYCHA facilities according to modern principles of sustainability, of healthy environments for kids. This is a massive opportunity. And I've literally had conversations with Joe Biden on this sort of subject when he was still running he and I spoke privately, and he said, we need to rebuild the country. And I'm going to suggest that if there's a place you'd want to start rebuilding the country, it would be public housing developments in New York City that have been neglected for years and decades. So this to me would be an enormous opportunity for us to help the president realize his vision in a way that would improve the lives of hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers.
Andrew, last issue-based question for you here. Where do you stand on police reform here in New York City? I've seen you talking about adding police officers to subway stations to try and add to some security there. Some critics and some other candidates have said that's not the way to go. Where do you stand, though, as far as police reform and making sure the police are appropriately funded?
I think that we have to do multiple things at once. We have to see to it that New Yorkers don't feel like their civil rights are going to be abused or jeopardized if they have a problematic encounter with a police officer. At the same time, we need to address the rising rates of crime and the public safety concerns that are really one of the top things I hear about when I talk to various New Yorkers. We can do multiple things at once. We can reform a culture, and we can also see to it that police officers are resolving violent crimes at higher rates, not lower rates. I think we should be looking at investing resources in other types of personnel that can intervene in situations that don't require an armed officer. Mental health workers, social workers, people that have expertise in de-escalating various types of situations. But at the same time, we're going to need police officers to help catch some of the perpetrators of the crimes that are unfortunately rising right now in many neighborhoods throughout New York.
All right, Andrew, two fun questions for you real quick. First things first, what's your favorite restaurant in all of New York City? Do you have a go-to place?
Oh gosh, like I'd say Corner Slice, which is like my local pizzeria. But then if I go bigger, like I think Grimaldi's is to me still the best pizza in New York. Yeah, so Corner Slice or Grimaldi's, I'll go with one of those two.
Not bad choices right there. Okay, what's a fun fact about you that people may not know?
That I grew up on the Ewing, Starks, Oakley, Mason Knicks and was a diehard Knicks fan until the Knicks got rid of Jeremy Lin. And then I just could not take it anymore. Because if you can imagine being an Asian guy who plays basketball in New York City and loving Linsanity, and then the Knicks dumping him over money, it just made me so sad and angry. I was like, all right, I give up. And so now I'm a Nets fan.
Oh, okay. I mean, those early 90s Knicks were the best, though. They really were the best. Those early guys were the best. And I saw you tweet about St. John's the other day, too. So I'm with you on that front, too.
Yeah, this may not go over that well in the Bronx, Kurt, but let's go Mets. I think it's going to be a great year.
That is what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear. All right, Andrew, last question for you here. I feel like sometimes when we have these conversations and we talk about the city, it comes off with everything that's wrong. But there's got to be something that's right about New York City that makes you want to lead it and makes you want to run it and makes you want to be the representative of the people of New York City. What is it about this city that truly makes you want to be the mayor of it, and what do you want people to remember about you when they cast their vote?
Well, New York City is a singular place, not just in the country, but the world. It has made me who I am. It has given me my family opportunities. The way I see New York City is that as long as people want to come together to do work, to experience art, to celebrate, then there will be a need for New York City. And that need's not going anywhere. That's what we have to stand up for. We have to recapture that spirit of coming together as quickly as possible and get the city back on its feet. And when I want people to think about me, I want people to think about the post-COVID comeback city being New York. We're going to come back faster than any other part of the country. That is my vision, and that's why I'm running for mayor.